Chapter 4 The Gods Within. We will now discuss the gods and their relationship to humans. Who are the gods? What are they? Yes, we must continue to question everything, even God. There is a good reason for this, as you will see. In magic and in life itself, anything that will not stand up to questioning is highly suspect, and if it will not yield answers, it should be either avoided or scrapped. As we rapidly approach the new era of Aquarius, all ideas, religions, and philosophies will be reviewed, and those which are of no further value will be left behind. You can see this happening already. People are beginning to question, and the established dogmas are having to cope with this. No longer can we hide behind the usual phrase, "It is God's will." So what is God's will? What is God? There have been many gods since people began the search for reality. Perhaps we ought to review some of these. First came the old gods, beloved of Wicca and the old religionists. These are literally as old as the hills, and pretty fearsome and diverse they are too. Many of these stem from Celtic origin, like the original horned god, Gwyn ap Nudd, who is said to have ruled the dark period of Glastonbury Tor. Have you ever wondered why people love to worship horned gods? These old gods seem to be terrifying creatures whose sole aim is to put us in our place and keep us there. However, this is not the real function of these creatures. It only seems to be this way. If you wanted to protect something really valuable without involving massive security systems and untold expense, what is the best way to do this? Quite simple. Play on superstition and the unknown. The would-be intruders would then either give up or inevitably harm themselves in some strange way. The ancient Egyptians were masters of this. In order to preserve the tombs of their kings, they invented the most frightening stories of curses. Now, what about the mythological figures like the gods of the Greeks? Myths are very important. They invariably contain more than a grain of truth. These gods are not meant to be worshipped as such. Rather, they are the epitome of an idea or a valid principle. In any philosophy, there has to be order or some sort of system by which things are categorized, compared, or examined. The Greek gods, their escapades, their qualities, are ways of describing energy patterns and interactions. For instance, Hermes, the messenger of the gods, patron of the magical sciences and of medicine, noticed the manner of action, quick darting here and there, carrying messages. Hermes represents the mysteries attributed to the planet Mercury. Before we go any further, do not make the mistake of thinking that the planet Mercury rules anything. It does not. The planetary system is used to categorize cosmic energy, to put it into convenient compartments so that it can be studied, compared, and eventually understood. Any astrologer does this by noting the planetary positions at birth. Certain distinctions can be made, trends deduced, potential revealed, and so on. Planets become a convenient focus for attention, in other words, a filing system. Creation is very complex, and it is necessary to divide it up into smaller areas in order to understand its complexities and to make use of its energies. Could you describe creation in a few sentences and explain why such and such occurs in the way that it does? An impossible task as it stands. Use some scheme that categorizes things and you stand a much better chance of understanding the whole. Here's an example. Suppose that you just suddenly appear on planet Earth, right in the middle of a farmyard. You have no idea what all this means. You have never seen anything like this before. How do you describe this to someone after you return home? The first thing you do is to break it down into convenient groups of similarity. For instance, those brown things with horns, 4 legs, and a tail. Let us name them cows. Nearby are some other creatures, smaller with 4 legs, and covered with thick wool. Let us name these sheep. Right away, we can start to establish facts. Cows are similar to sheep. Sheep are smaller, and cows have no wool, though sheep do, and so on. With a little more observation and reasoning, you would soon deduce that cows do not breed with sheep or mate with these, and that they are a different species. Philosophies and magic use a similar technique. Everything is put into recognizable pigeonholes. The main system of classification used in magic is that of the planets. Through thousands of years of observation, humans have learned how to deduce cosmic action and reaction by using the planets as a focus, as a filing cabinet. The mistake was made when humans started to believe that the planets in fact ruled or controlled things. More will be said later about the planets, but for now, let us return to the Greek gods. The Greeks' entire system is based on planets and on planetary action, but instead of using abstractions and symbols, the Greeks used personalities. This is very important. For all gods to be really effective, they must first represent an idea. Secondly, they must be recognizable in human terms. They must be people or superhumans. Which can you identify with the easiest? Zeus, Apollo, Aphrodite, Thor, Thoth, or five-pointed star? Notice that I said identify. The gods are personal. You can communicate with them without using complicated procedures. They understand, they get things done. But unfortunately, they also destroy and create havoc. Gods in general seem to be quite contrary. This is because humans built the gods around certain ideas and bestowed them with human tendencies. Should we really be surprised if they appear to act with human fallibilities? What started out as a good idea eventually became unsound and unusable. It should have been scrapped. Gods, by definition, can only be perfect. We may cover up these apparent inadequacies by saying and believing that we are not wise enough to know the truth, or that the truth may never be revealed because we are not wise enough to understand. Question and search for truth. You will soon see that this is not so. Ideas that originated several thousand years ago are not necessarily of use today. Put a taboo on an apple tree, and schoolboys will still try to steal the apples, and even a relatively inexperienced vandal will laugh. This is the 20th century, for better or for worse. The old values belong to olden times, and while wisdom and truth are perpetual, these vehicles quite often wear out. When Christianity first came to England, it brought with it the idea of one God, a sort of cosmic overseer. Lesser gods were dispensed with, or rather replaced by archangels and angels. Things of evil were given the title of demons, who also had an overseer, the devil. The devil was easy to recognize through his works of evil. The problem that most people could not seem to understand was that the devil, apart from the occasional burning and torturing in hell, seemed to have control over all those things that most of us liked. Simple everyday things like sex, money, success, happiness. On the opposite side, we had God who preached death and damnation to those who did not jump when he spoke, and this God actually admitted to being a jealous God. It was not too strange, really, that on the human front, the devil was winning all the time, or so the church informed us. Yet, who was taking all the money? Who owned vast tracts of choice land? Who lived in splendor, and who burned and tortured? The devil? No, the church. Did God stop all this? No, of course not. How could this Christian God do anything when it could not get its own values together? A God who incidentally created the devil in the first place, a God who was created by human beings. The idea of one God is not a new one. The early Christians borrowed this from the Hebrews. Over the centuries, this man-made God became a devil, a God of confusion and chaos, a God that made unreasonable demands. In reality, this God is quite dead, by virtue of the fact that it never lived in the first place. As I said earlier, gods are filing systems that we can contact in a personal way. They do not exist in their own right. They are man-made. They are therefore fallible. Gods are useful. They aid the formation of a belief pattern. Remember, as you think, so you are. Or, if you can believe, it will surely be. Just try believing that you are going to be much better off tomorrow. It is difficult to believe in your own power to change your life. You feel that no one is going to hear you. You're all alone. Now change the thinking. Up there is a God. He or she can do anything. All you have to do is ask. Here at last is your own personal genie, and any wish can be granted. Those of you who prefer a gentler image may choose a beneficent fairy godmother. No, this is not a silly game or a trick question. It is a way to truth. Really think about this. You now have a God who cares. He or she will grant any wishes regardless. This is not fiction. It is absolute truth. Dare you think about this? Why not? Everyone else invents gods to suit themselves, so why not you? Disrespectful? Not Christian? Fear of retribution? Violation of cosmic? Stop. Think. Taboos. Outmoded thinking from the past. The inability of today's gods to exercise any control over the affairs of mankind. Why? 2 reasons. 1. Most people do not believe in gods anymore. 2. Those who do tend to believe in some sort of degenerate being who is going to extract a price for their sins. In short, if they believe in something less than perfect, something capable of human hatred, a sort of spirit guide with power. What sort of God do you believe in? Have you ever really thought about this? Why not do this now? Stop reading and write down a description of your God. Really think about this and about your relationship with this being. Do not leave any stone unturned. Let all your thoughts and criticisms come out into the open. All right, let us call this List A. Put this to one side for a moment while we progress a little further. Suppose that you could adopt a new God, one much more in keeping with your needs and your beliefs. What sort of God would this be? How would this God react to your request for help? Would everything be granted? Would all your questions be answered? Would you be able to communicate with this God without falling on your knees or making some sort of sacrifice? Do not let your previous ideas get in the way. Think about the qualities that you would like. Stop reading, think about this, then write it all down. Now, having done this, let us call this list B. Again, put this aside while we continue. This time, I am going to give you an image of a God. Read carefully. This God is above all others and can create anything you wish. This God cares. Whatever you ask will be granted without question. Nothing will ever be refused, no matter how great or small. This God desires only that you are content, successful, happy, and fulfilled. Keep this image in your mind. Anything is now possible. It is almost like having a blank checkbook and unlimited funds. You can write anything on these checks. They will always be honored. Now think about the possibilities. Then make a new list. Call this List C. I want you to write down your thoughts about this God. Keep those thoughts totally positive as though it were true. Think about the things you could do, the things you could have. Write these down. How would you feel about this? How would life change for the better? Use your imagination. Give it full rein. Indulge yourself. Remember, no limits, no awkward questions, just total freedom to do anything, just to have anything. Now you are in contact with total abundance, your own genie in a bottle. Write this down. Take your time. Now, having looked at God from every angle, what conclusion can we draw from all this? List A shows your present relationship, if any, with a God. Your ideas about this God are at this stage not completely your own. Most of these have been given to you by someone else, and you accepted them without question. Any ideas that you could not accept, you push to one side, usually a game without question, and perhaps you replace these with something a little better. Some of you will have thrown out a God completely, perhaps because it did not listen or grant your wishes. List B raised your sights and gave you more scope. How well did you take the initiative? The question was, what sort of God would you like? Is this new God any different from your own? How great a difference is this? How many restrictions are still placed on your life or your relationship with this God? Lists A and B are a monument to negative and narrow thinking, and you will eventually see how this mountain of mistakes has limited your life and your inherent creative abilities. List C is of a different order. Here you were confronted with total freedom and absolute power. How then did you react? I hope that you really did take the initiative, if only for a few minutes. At the end of it all, we are still here on planet Earth with the same problems and unsatisfactory life conditions. Who do we blame for this? There are only two possibilities, you or God. Let us use the old excuse, God is always right, and we should not question his will. Or maybe it's some karmic debt or fate that is the problem. Did any of you think that perhaps it is God that is wrong? If you did, you would be right, 100% correct. If your life is unsatisfactory, then your beliefs in your God are mainly the problem. God is perfect, and we are not to know the reasons, so the established religions tell us, yet something is wrong. What sort of God is sadistic enough to cause us to constantly reincarnate with so-called karmic debts without giving us a clue as to what these are? Who is it that wants us to live in misery and will not answer our questions? I will tell you, someone else is God, someone who could not sort out his or her life and so invented excuses. The excuses were wrapped in mystery and called God's will. People built their own version of a God, and everyone else accepted it without thinking. Let us return to list C. I gave you an image of a totally beneficent God with unlimited power, there for the asking. If this God existed, life would be free from problems and there would be no lack. It is a nice hypothetical idea, but why is your life not satisfactory? Why are there so many unanswered questions? Look at the gods you believe in. They epitomize subservience, poverty, illness, karmic debts, evolution, and other such miseries. You believe in these, you accept these, so they work for you according to their nature. Remember that these are humans' ideas of a God. Now look again at the gods that you believe in. Is it any wonder that things are not as they should be? These gods are abominations, monsters, and sources of restriction, dead gods who create death. The only reason you really reincarnate is because deep down you believe that this is true. You believe in karmic debts. You believe in restriction and lack. Compare these gods and their associated problems with the image that I gave you. There is a tremendous difference. No karma, no reincarnation, no restriction, no poverty, no misery, or no wanting. There is only freedom and abundance. I gave you an image, a possibility. Now I will give you the one truth that will change your life if you let it, and it will make your magic work every time. The image that I gave you happens to be true. I gave you an idea, but you reacted to this idea and made it into a personal attitude toward a God. In the search for the real God, you must first reject all others. Start with nothing, and using constructive thought, build up your idea of what God ought to be for you. Any negative or restricted ideas must be avoided. Creativity is the key word. Your God must be creative, not destructive. Using your imagination, you build up a picture of God. You identify with the image, and by belief in this image, you eventually control maximum power. Whatever you believe in invariably comes true, so start to believe in something that is real. It is not as difficult as you think. Like the exercise earlier in this book, start by removing everything, then after careful deliberation, start to reassemble or replace slowly and gradually. Keep the goal in mind. The real God is within you. Look at the top, not the base. Take it away from a human level. The real God is all-powerful and unrestricted, and so is beyond our limited human concepts. A human will look at a problem and decide that it cannot be solved. A God will always find a way for you to solve it because it can see more avenues and possibilities than you can. You do not have to sweat and strain to become wise enough to see even a small % of the possibilities. All you have to do is to ask God. There is no point in wasting your time trying to solve something that is outside of your scope. If in doubt, ask your perfect God. This God obviously has all the answers. Think about a God in this way and elevate your faults so that you begin to identify with the most powerful being that you can possibly conceive. The results will speak for themselves as your new belief patterns begin to work. Contacting your own true God is vitally important in the creative scheme that magic seeks to reveal to you. The scheme works like this. There is energy, life force if you like, and it can be used to create. 2. This energy is abundant and without end. There is no restriction in its supply. 3. Human beings have access to this energy at all times. 4. We have total free choice in the way in which we use this energy. No one sits in judgment except you. 5. Belief patterns help establish physical results. We will come back to this scheme and its principles many times throughout this book, but for now, we are dealing with belief patterns, and God is part of this. Let us look at the possibilities from two opposing viewpoints. On the one hand, You can believe in and contact a god who will ensure that your magical intention works. Or, on the other hand, you can fearfully utter a few spells from some grimoire. Which is going to work? The former, of course, because you are aligning yourself with infallibility. The other alternative is ineffective, as you do not even believe in what you're doing. You are hoping and wishing. Instead, you should be anticipating. As a human being, you are creative all the time. You are using energy and creating things around yourself without being aware of the fact. You are creating according to your present beliefs, most of which lie deep in your subconscious mind, away from view. Now you can see why things go wrong? Now can you see why things go wrong? Those beliefs are working all the time. They are not your beliefs. You accepted them without thinking, without exercising choice. Your subconscious mind directs power on your behalf, and it will continue to do so until you decide otherwise. It is no use blaming life, fate, someone else, or even God. You accepted belief patterns, and so you get the results, be they good or bad. Your subconscious mind does not know the difference between good or bad. It simply acts in the way you tell it to act. Fortunately, the reverse works just as well. Change your beliefs, present these to your subconscious mind, and everything changes to your advantage. For some of us, magic is the best way to change these patterns. It helps us use our mind, emotions, and imagination in a constructive manner. Magic leads us to our real potential and inherent power. The magical way is not complex in essence. It is quite simple once you have grasped the basic facts, and these are as follows. 1. There is an overall God who is totally for you, no matter what you are. This God will become whatever you wish it to be. It does not control you or try to interfere with your life. It only supplies those energies which you ask for. 2. Your subconscious mind directs power for you. It takes power from this God and creates whatever you wish. There are no limits other than those that you provide. Once given an instruction, it never fails to carry this out. Your subconscious mind does not understand the English language or any other language, which is just as well. Can you imagine what would happen if every fleeting thought became fact? The language of the subconscious mind is symbolic, and it responds to belief, a very useful safeguard. 3. Your life, destiny, and fortune are literally in your hands. You are totally creative and capable of whatever you wish to be, do, or have. You are the deciding factor in any situation, if only you knew it. Up to now, you have been unaware of your potential and of the possibilities. You have been asleep, and now it is time to awake. Look around and decide what you really want, and then claim it as your own. Magic will not only help this awakening, but also provide you with a sensible base and a sound pattern of personal perfection, based on true beliefs and total reality. Get to know your personal God, not as some distant, revered, and benign figure, but as a friend, a total giver. Ask, and you will be given. Seek, and you will find. Knock, and it will be open to you. Who else could make such a promise and keep it? The answer is God, your own real God. As a final thought, most rituals do not work because there is no power and no knowledge of how to contact this power. Countless would-be students believe in words, robes, complex secret formulas, and so on. However, if you do not locate the power source and then connect to it, you finish up with a futile ritual. Your power supply is, or God is within you, so make use of it. Moving away from the concept of the central and all-powerful God, we ought now to look at another enigma, the so-called higher self or holy guardian angel. Let us dispense with all traditional ideas of shining golden figures who are so far removed that we can never know them. God and the guardian angels always seem to be grouped together, while human beings are placed on another level. From one point of view, this may well be correct. Purely human action and reasoning can be classified as a poor reflection of divinity. However, both are necessary in the scheme of things. God awareness works on one level, while human awareness works on another, usually the physical. The relationship is, however, much closer than is usually realized. We are all part of the same oneness. To deny human reasoning and action while praising God is similar to dropping a rock on your foot while saying, "There you are, God." I do hope this pleases you. I am in great pain and I will probably be crippled. See how I am mastering the physical evil which I live in? I know this sounds stupid. It is. But nevertheless, the same basic idea prevails even today. The cause of this is quite easy to see. Humans knew that they had to control the physical and master their own minds and resultant actions in order to achieve anything. They realized that there was something higher than the physical, something behind the obvious. While they made the prime mistake of presuming that the power behind all this was too far removed for them to contact. Therefore, they believed what they saw and touched and put everything else on a so-called spiritual plane. In order to contact this spiritual plane, humans denied themselves and sacrificed, presuming that this would raise them above the physical, to where the gods live. Humans are still doing this. The physical end of the spectrum became over-exaggerated and separated. This is, however, an untrue view. All levels of life are connected and all are reachable. To presume anything else is folly of the worst kind. As you know, if you believe in something, it will come true. Believe in the right kind of things rather than incorrect presumptions. To return to the idea of the real self, part of you is in direct contact with God's power. In other words, that part of you knows everything and can do anything it wishes on any level. So how do we get to know this wonder worker? Why does it seem so far away? It is not. People have removed it, just like they mistakenly did with God and power. Your real self happens to be you. At the moment, any similarity between you and this superb being must seem a little far-fetched, but I assure you that this statement is the truth. You and your real self are one and the same person. Let me explain. If we lived in a perfect world with no poverty, no lack, no wars, no disease, if everything you could possibly think of was exactly right, how would you react? I will tell you. You would be happy, content, positive in mind and action, free from worry, optimistic, and enterprising. In this atmosphere, you would never dream of being defeatist or negative. No, of course not. Why? Because when the environment is perfect, you function perfectly. The existing conditions or facts would help dictate your state of mind. Now take the reverse and have a look at the chaos we live in here and now. It is more than likely that you cannot think positively because on the face of it, it still seems pointless. Again, the facts are the result of belief patterns, and these belief patterns are based on the wrong conclusions. Life appears to be rather drab, and there is no hope unless we subscribe to the sackcloth and ashes penances. You, that is all of you, are aware of all levels of life, but you exist for the time being here on earth. You look at the facts, believe these, and because you have power, you make these facts work for you. Your real self is perfect, but you can be deluded by the purely physical end of awareness, thereby causing yourself many problems. By looking upward at God and your higher self, you're using psychology, a sort of carrot and donkey technique that works as long as you do not carry the apparent facts or physical existence with you. This is why you search for truth and question. Please remember, however, that this higher self is not external to you. It is another aspect of you which functions on a different level. So believe in you, in your power, in your many levels of awareness, and in the total perfection that is you. Realize that you are far greater than you think, and realize that you are far greater than you think you are, and that you encompass all creation on many levels. You have vast potential. From a physical point of view, however, you seem to be totally restricted. Magic offers you a way out of the dilemma. By keeping in touch with yourself, you become aware of your inherent powers. Restrictions are seen for what they are, imaginary and untrue. Gradually, you learn self-assertion and self-development, and self-determination, which in short means happiness and fulfillment, no matter what anyone else does. The facts melt away. The new light dawns, and life belongs to you again. Remember, you can make anything happen. You have been doing this since birth without realizing it. Now you are becoming aware of the truth. Take the staff of truth, become yourself, and work your path in your own way using creative power as you go. The Magical Pentagram Circle. This chapter is extremely important, and it is vital that you do not overlook it. We will call this the erection of the Magical Pentagram Circle. You can do this anywhere, on a bus or train, in your place of work, while you are out shopping. Practice as often as you'd like. Practice makes perfect. Apart from being a magical exercise, this circle is very practical and useful in everyday life. Always remember that the magic pentagram circle is perfect and subject to the laws of perfection and truth. If you are faced with an irritating situation, erect the pentagram circle. Feel that you are surrounded by a magical circle of pure white light. Sometimes this is seen as a blue flame. You are safe inside this. Nothing can get through if you do not want it to. Use your imagination or visualize. You will be surprised how effective this becomes with a little practice and patience. The irritating party will soon get the message and will leave you alone. If there is some problem that you wish to sort out, do not fret or lose your temper. Become calm, erect the magic circle and pentagrams, then think calmly about all this. Ask for answers and you will get them, often in surprising ways. The ritual of the pentagram is not just a magical exercise, it is functional, so use it often. The Pentagram Ritual exercise. We will now start to develop this exercise by using ritual. For this, you will need one white candle. First, lay out the temple area. Place your single white candle in the center of your altar. Again, you do not have to align your altar with the magnetic points of the compass, and if you are really stuck for space, the central light can just as easily be moved to some convenient place. It is the inner work that is important. The candle is there to help you concentrate. Before starting any ritual, it is important that you establish calmness and as much detachment from everyday affairs as possible. You cannot work an effective ritual if your mind is constantly bombarded by numerous thoughts. To be an effective magician, you have to control your thoughts. I will show you how later. It is not as difficult as you think. Again, practice makes perfect. Relax and let go as much as you can, but do not strain to remove thoughts. Use soft music to help you relax if you like. This may sound obvious, but magical lighting, candles, oils, lamps, subtle light, is also important. There really is not much point in lighting candles if you have 200 watts of electricity blazing away. The effect is completely ruined. If you do not like a complete blackout before a ritual, here are some ideas. Relax in another room and then go into the temple, perhaps carrying a lighted taper from which to light your candles. You could start with the temple in darkness, apart from a single candle, lamp, or nightlight that is burning in some corner, thereby giving you enough light to see what you're doing. If you like, before the ritual starts, you can always put this out. Some people prefer to keep a constant sanctuary lamp burning. If you have a permanent temple, do this. When you start a ritual, you are building up power from nothing other than peace and tranquility. By using minimum light before you start and gradually lighting lamps, you are following this idea through on a physical level. Having achieved a calm state of mind, you will be shown how to ritually erect the magical circle and the 4 pentagrams and put them on standby. When you are ready, stand in front of the central candle facing the quarter designated as east. Imagine a bright light shining inside you. Then imagine that some of the light inside yourself has transferred itself to the candle flame. Then light your central candle. Pause for a while and realize that the central candle represents your inner subconscious power. Now, imagine that the encircled cross of the 4 elements, sometimes called the Kabbalistic cross, is extending outward from the center of your candle flame. See Figure 1 on page 67. You may, if you like, draw this in the air with your finger extended in front of you. You could also create the encircled cross in the traditional way by touching the forehead then the lower breast, then the right shoulder, followed by the left shoulder. Finish by clasping your hands and fingers together before the breast, as if in prayer. Use whatever means you can think of to fix the encircled cross in your imagination, if only for a second or two, as long as you are aware that it is there. This age-old symbol is the cross of the elements. By constructing this in your mind, you are putting your mind in touch with the elements in a rather special way. It is always best to combine physical action and movement with the imagination in ritual work. However, you can erect this in your imagination without even moving a muscle. The magic circle starts at the east as you trace a pentagram using the invoking star. This is always used when opening the ritual. The vanishing star is used when closing down. Both are shown in Figure 2. When you have traced the pentagram in the air in front of you and finished at the commencing point of the pentagram, then imagine a central point in the pentagram, stab it in the middle. Proceed in a clockwise direction with your arm outstretched through south, west, and finally north. When the last pentagram has been traced in the north, still holding your arm with your finger or magical dagger outstretched, continue to the east where you started from. You have traced a pentagram at each of the 4 quarters, the cardinal points. You should now be surrounded by a circle of white light with a pentagram in the same white light at each quarter. The pentagram ritual is now established and complete. To put this magical circle on standby, all you have to do is visualize the 4 weapons, the magical sword, the magical rod of power, a cup or chalice, and a shield. This implies control of energy. Extend your arms into the form of a cross, still being aware of the magical circle and 4 pentagrams. Imagine in each star the appropriate magical weapon. Looking toward the east, imagine a magical sword suspended in the center of the pentagram. Spend a little time on this. Then face south and imagine a magical rod of power or spear surrounded by fire in the center of this pentagram, yet unaffected by it. Then face and imagine in the center of this pentagram a cup or chalice filled with magical water. Finally, turn to the north and imagine in the center of this pentagram a shield. The shape and design is up to you. In all cases, use the images you saw in your inner temple. Spend some time thinking about the pentagrams in Magic Circle, or meditating. With little practice, this procedure will soon become second nature. Once you have erected the magical circle and pentagrams, you can proceed with any magical work you desire. The construction of the pentagram ritual is known as an opening and closing ritual, and it should never be omitted. With constant use and practice, your subconscious will accept the master key you are giving it and then will respond to your commands. Do not skip over this, or you will effectively prevent yourself from obtaining the power that ritual magic can give you. At the end of any magical work, it is important to perform the closing ritual. Quite simply, this is the reverse of the opening formula. On conclusion of any magical work, face the east, see in your imagination the sword disappear. See the pentagram fade and finally disappear from view. Realize that this quarter is now at rest. Now see the circle of light fade and disappear until it reaches the next pentagram, and so on. Continue around the magic circle, closing down each pentagram, and seeing the appropriate magical weapon disappear in turn. Finally, see the circle of light disappear at the east once more. Then, standing in front of your central candle facing east, you realize that you are now going back to ordinary consciousness. Magical work is at an end. See the encircled cross above the candle fade and disappear, and the light pass back into yourself. Then extinguish the candle. The magical circle is now at rest. Practice at least once a day for the next 2 weeks. We will move on to the next stage in Chapter 5. Remember that you can perform this ritual entirely in your imagination without any arm waving. The movements are from the traditional pentagram ritual and are not mandatory requirement, only a suggestion. Opening and closing ritual of the pentagram. With regard to the ritual of the pentagram, you may wonder how it is possible to see this in the mind's eye while imagining something else, such as opening the circle and pentagrams and the magical weapons. In other words, imagining two things at once. It is all a question of memory. To imagine several different things at the same time would, of course, be difficult if not impossible. Fortunately, we do not need to do this. As we build up the pentagram ritual, we establish each part in our memory, moving on through each successive stage, concentrating only on whatever is necessary. For instance, you start with the central light, imagining that this exists. Then your attention moves on to the next stage of imagining the encircled cross, then the first pentagram, and so on. There's no need to keep the image of the central light and encircled cross constantly in your imagination, because they are presumed to exist and in fact do exist in your memory. We use this in similar procedures in everyday life. For instance, suppose you were standing in a room facing a window. You would see the window quite clearly. Now, if you turned around to face the opposite wall, you would of course see the wall instead. However, you would still know that the window existed because you had just seen it. In fact, you could recall this in your imagination because its image is stored in your memory. In a similar fashion, having become familiar with the room, you would know what the room looked like in totality without actually seeing this physically. It is exactly the same way with the pentagram ritual. Creating your inner temple and using your inner seeing, in other words, using your imagination, builds up an imaginary room in your memory. All through the building up procedure, you establish each stage before moving on to the next. Therefore, at the pool, you are free to concentrate on this, knowing that the inner temple, doorways, and weapons exist in your memory, because you have put them there. At the end of the ritual, it is necessary to inform your subconscious mind that they are no longer established. Hence the need for a closing procedure. Never forget that although the magic circle and inner temple are imaginary, it would be easy to dismiss the entire concept as being worthless. This is not the case. Any deliberate erection of a symbolic pattern will have an effect on the inner mind because you are using what is, in effect, a powerful language that the subconscious understands. It is therefore necessary to treat these symbols with respect and practice and to use them often. You should also bear in mind that symbols are not holy or sacred. To worship them is sheer folly. Likewise, they are not meant to be worn as ornaments or lucky charms. People who do so show a marked lack of understanding as to the real nature of symbols.